Hi everybody, it's time for another chapter from my novel, Living Nightmare, which is book 1 to the Other Side of Gifted series. Last week I read chapter 15, where Tobin was still in a depression over the loss of Ange, who left to live with her Uncle Travis. It takes the arrival of new patients in order to pull her out of her bedroom and her sad state. First to arrive is a set of identical twins with dependency issues, but it's the third patient to arrive on the 4th floor ward that surprises Tobin the most, because she's been placed in the same room with Tobin. Hannah has amnesia. She has no idea who she is or what her past is. She was found wandering the streets in blood-splattered clothes. Blood that wasn't just hers. In chapter 16, we're going to learn a little bit more about Hannah. We're going to see how the two are getting along in the room. And there'll be more questions about what happened to Hannah. Chapter 16. The woman reached out for me. I tried to help. I tried so hard, but my arm was dead against my side. She was dragged backwards into the darkness by a white hand. A cold hand grabbed her throat, crushed mine. It was like a band of ice wrapped around the vulnerable bones, burning as it tightened. Bones cracked. She lost. We lost. I failed her. I always fail them. Dream journal. The impossible had happened. 7 nights had passed and there was no request for a room change. Tobin didn't know how to feel. Scared? Hopeful? The 2 roommates were relaxing on their beds, each absorbed in her own activity. Hannah broke the silence. "Can I ask?" She closed the book she was reading and looked to Tobin, who was writing in her dream journal. "What is it with everyone asking about my sleeping?" Tobin stopped writing. Her chest went tight. She wasn't prepared for the conversation. She couldn't answer. Her mouth had gone desert dry. "I mean, I get the nurses and Dr. Dawson asking, but some of the patients are a little too into my nights. The purple-haired chick, Melanie, she and her little posse of busybodies ask me every morning. It's creepy." "Oh. Is it like an initiation thing? Or do I snore so super loud that they can hear me?" Tobin put the pen in her dream journal to keep her place before closing it. She rubbed her damp palms on her pants. Hannah's eyes were clouded with worry. No, she said. "It's not you. They're asking because of me." She couldn't look at Hannah. Her gaze went to the window, where she could see the cotton puff clouds invading the sky. "Huh?" Tobin didn't want to tell her. They had formed a cautious relationship, and she didn't want to endanger it. True, she didn't know Hannah well enough to call her a friend, and she wasn't sure she was ready for that since Ange left. But they had an unspoken agreement that benefited them both. It pleased Dr. Dawson and Marie to see them bonding, and allowed them the space to avoid oppressive scrutiny from the other patients. Hannah didn't judge Tobin, nor did she gossip about her like the rest did. Of course, she had her own issues to trudge through, being a possible felon or a hapless victim. But either way, Tobin was no longer the sole subject of stares and whispers. "They're surprised you're still sharing a room with me," Tobin said after a period of silence. Hannah was nice to her, and she owed her the truth, no matter what. Refusing to play the coward, she met Hannah's eyes. "Why? I like our room." Tobin's stomach flipped at the words. Did she mean it? How could she? "It's not the room they're talking about. It's me." "You? What's wrong with you?" "Well, my nightmares." Nightmares. Hannah let out a choked laugh. Everyone has bad nights. Geez, the people here are dramatic. Shaking her head, she asked, So you have what, nightmares? Like night terrors? Have you had any recently? Almost every night, Tobin wanted to answer. Instead, she just nodded. Well, obviously they don't bother me. In fact, if you make any noise when you sleep, like snore or talk, I haven't noticed. Tobin furrowed her brow and tried to read Hannah's expression. Her face was smooth, open. She wasn't lying. Was it possible? Thinking back, Tobin realized that Hannah never so much as moved when a nightmare woke Tobin in a scream. She was always asleep. Oh, was all she could say. The conversation ended there. Hannah seemed to have lost interest. A nurse came by to remind them that their journals would be collected before supper. Dr. Dawson had a thing for journals. He had Hannah write down anything she remembered along with a brief summary of her day. Every day. As though her habits might hint at the type of person she was. Nearly finished transcribing her latest dream, Tobin chewed her bottom lip and peeked over at Hannah, who had begun writing intently. Her head was bent over her journal, hair falling to hide her face from view. Tobin felt guilty for thinking it, but she wondered how much of what Hannah wrote was real. A handful of times she noticed Hannah asking staff and patients personal questions about their hobbies and families, and it was usually just before she had to write her entry. It must be horrible having no memories, Tobin thought. Childhood, gone. Family, unknown. It had to be eating Hannah's inside like a poison. Throw in the eyes always on her, waiting for her to remember something. Tobin realized she couldn't hold it against Hannah for fudging a few entries. She would probably do the same thing. Tobin got along well with Hannah, but that didn't mean she fully trusted her roommate. How could she, when the girl didn't even know who she was? She kept an eye on Hannah, while Hannah had her eyes on everyone, from the struggling twins to skinny Tristan Watkins, who was gradually gaining weight. Even the staff were studied. But since Tobin could be accused of the same thing, she kept silent. Maybe it was just Hannah's way of settling in. If you ask me, Hannah said, gesturing at Tobin's journal and shutting her own with a snap, if that's the only reason why you're here, this place is beyond stupid. What's stupid? Marie appeared in the doorway. Hannah flushed all the way to her hairline and began to stammer. People's inability to accept change, Tobin answered calmly. Marie's toffee-colored eyes twinkled. Oh? She stepped into the room. She was dressed in light blue scrubs and a pink cardigan. Yeah, Hannah gave Tobin a grin of thanks. Some people can't move with the times. They want to stay locked in their present. Like technophobes who are too stubborn to learn how to work computers or smartphones. Oh, I see, Marie chuckled. Well, I think it's great that you're interested in the world's progress. Even if we're insane, Hannah's laugh was strained. Had she noticed Marie's interest in them too? Not that they were the only patients Marie watched closely, Tobin thought. Tristan and the twins were obviously on the head nurse's list as well. On the head nurse's radar as well. Marie's eyes narrowed on Hannah. I don't care for that term, she said, and crossed her arms. And it's the last word I'd use to describe you two. Then why are we at Mendwell? Tobin wanted to ask. She didn't, though. Neither did Hannah. They gave each other eye rolls. Weeks passed, turning the weather warmer as April showers melted the last of the snow. Tobin noted the change by studying the world beyond her bedroom window, where the once barren trees had begun to grow new leaves. While the outside world had moved on, life within the walls of Mendwell had little changed. The daily routine of medication, sessions, and the handing in of journal entries continued as usual. Tobin was glad that her bond with Hannah was growing stronger. Inwardly, however, she was increasingly concerned. Something was wrong with Hannah, and Tobin wasn't sure what to do. Keeping Hannah's problem from the nurses made her anxious. She didn't like it. Hannah had begged her not to tell anyone, scared that if Dr. Dawson found out he'd increase her meds and keep her at Mendel forever. Tobin had agreed, but as April skipped May and ran into June, she couldn't ignore the feeling she'd made a terrible decision. Was she harming Hannah's recuperation by staying quiet? It made her sick to think about it. But could she snitch on her roommate? Both options left her a pile of nerves. Tobin walked into the bedroom and paused in the doorway. She sucked in a sharp breath. Hannah stood by Tobin's bed looking at the dresser, eyes empty. Not again. Her heart kicked against her ribs, unease rippling her skin. The first time she had come across Hannah with a blank expression, Tobin assumed she was thinking. Nothing wrong. Hannah had been standing by the window in their bedroom, except instead of looking out, she faced the room. It took Tobin calling her name 4 times to get a reaction. When Hannah registered she wasn't alone, confusion flushed her skin. She didn't remember having gone to their room after lunch. Didn't remember anything during the hour Tobin had been in session with Dr. Dawson. Tobin watched Hannah anxiously, searching for a sign that her roommate knew she was there. Hannah? Nothing. Not a flinch, not a blink. Hannah resembled a doll with a vacant expression in her wide lavender eyes and slightly parted lips. It was eerie how motionless she was. Tobin took a step forward, eyes locked on her roommate. Her hands grew damp. The first time it happened, Hannah acted like the incident didn't worry her. She must have been deep into a daydream, time having sped by without her noticing. That was her excuse. Tobin saw through the lie, but let it go. She knew fear, was close friends with it. When one lived alongside nightly violence, fear became unable to hide. Whatever had happened to Hannah, Tobin knew it had shaken her. Hannah? Tobin was in front of her roommate. Come on, Hannah. React. Her roommate's face was smooth, expressionless. She barely blinked as she gazed through Tobin. Tobin reached out to touch her, but hesitated, her hand hovering an inch from Hannah's shoulder. She didn't want to repeat of the second time she found Hannah in a similar state. It happened in the common room. Hannah was watching a cartoon on the sofa, or that's what Tobin had believed when she sat beside her. Melanie sat on Hannah's other side, an inch closer to the armrest when Tobin joined them. Tobin ignored her. She studied the screen and made a sarcastic comment, thinking Hannah would laugh. When Hannah continued to stare vacantly, Tobin glanced at her. Hannah wasn't watching the show. Her eyes were focused a few inches north of the TV. Tobin tapped her knee, and Hannah shot to her feet with a harsh cry. Melanie glared at Tobin. Tobin stared in shock at Hannah, who had looked around the room, trying to figure out what had happened. Tristan sat in the love seat, his face ghostly white. Hannah breathed heavily even after she came to. She didn't stay in the common room, mumbled about forgetting something she had to do, and quickly left. Tobin tried to follow her, but one hard look from Nurse Jo had her crossing to the window instead. She didn't mention it to Hannah when they went to bed at night. Hannah didn't bring it up either. They pretended it never happened. Eyes on Hannah now, Tobin let her hand drop. She couldn't do it. Not again. If Hannah freaked out and a patient or nurse came to find Tobin alone with her, they'd assume she had done something. She couldn't chance it. Guilt made her nauseous, but it wasn't enough to stop her from leaving Hannah in their room, mind-caged in something only she could see. Well, that's the end of chapter 16. As we can see, there's a lot more going on with Hannah than just lost memories. Are these trance-like moments a effect of no memories, or is it something she had to deal with before? Well, if you keep watching the videos, you'll eventually find out. Until then, I hope you all have a fabulous week, and I'll see you again next Monday. Goodbye and take care.